Okay.
Great. Terrific. Well, welcome everybody. Oh, Alana, you want to kick it off or?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yes, hi everybody. Elena Peppinger, project manager for the Champion Provider Fellowship Program. I'm so excited to be officially launching this three-part series with Brand Miller Communications, the Persuasive Narrative series. For those that were able to join us at the mini college in September, you were able to get a small little sense of what persuasive narrative is. But in this series, we'll definitely be taking a deeper dive into this work. So I know that we also have some fellows from all different cohorts, which is really fantastic, as well as some fellows from our new cohort. For those that may be part of past cohorts, you're very familiar with Mike Miller. He's the president and founder of the cause-oriented public relations agency, Brand Miller Communications. He has over 30 years of experience working with media, public and policy makers to help shape public opinion and motivate positive societal change. Rooted in issues affecting the nation's health, food, and agricultural communities. Mike works to raise awareness on issues ranging from the crisis surrounding the health of farm workers to America's emerging obesity epidemic. His skills as a strategic communicator have helped to address a broad list of critical legislative issues, including his media supportive efforts to remove unhealthy food and beverages in schools and his campaign to win support for menu labeling legislation. Mike is a wonderful resource that we have here within the fellowship program, and you all will have an opportunity to hear from him at multiple times during your participation in the fellowship. And finally, I wanted to also introduce a new member to the Champion Provider Fellowship team, but not to Brand Miller Communications. That's Muriel Beniarez Miller, who is a 16-year communications expert specializing in consumer health and education and multicultural communications. She develops and manages integrated communications campaigns aimed at educating consumers and changing and improving behaviors. She directs audience research, identifies opportunities, and crafts unique strategies to influence and educate a specific audience segment. She has executed many campaigns, including award-winning comprehensive social marketing campaign, Steps to a Healthier Salinas, resulting in groundbreaking and lasting health improvements. And so, as many of you know, Paula Hamilton, he recently retired at the end of the year. Muriel is stepping into many of the roles that Paula assumed in the fellowship program. With that, I will go ahead and send it back to Mike and Muriel.
Yeah, and what I've just discovered is we need to write shorter bios for you. That's
or I can edit, but there's a lot of great stuff to cover. You all are very impressive.
So welcome everybody. It's a real pleasure to see some of the amazing champion providers that we've dealt with in the past and been able to work with in the past, as well as the new cohort, which we're very excited to be working with. We have been talking for quite a while about introducing this whole persuasive narrative workshop series. It's a fairly simple concept, persuasive narratives, but it does take a little bit of time to walk you through it. So we wanted to be able to break this up. We know you're very busy and it's hard to get a major chunk of your time. So we've broken it up into the 3 different sessions. The parameter of this, the really key part of all this though, when we're talking about persuasive narratives, is what you've heard from us many times over and over again. And that's the power of the white coat and the influence that you have working with different levels of policymakers across the board. So as dentists and as physicians, you have an automatic level of respect. People, I know that may be hard for some of you to believe sometimes, but people pay attention to you. They want to work with you, and you bring real credibility to many of the nutrition arguments that we're going to be talking about. But the other thing is, you also can bring some real passion to the work, which is, I think, one of the strengths of the Champion Provider Fellowship. And persuasive narratives are a place for us to start to bring the human element really forward, not just the technical knowledge that you have, but also the experiences that you see all the time. So that's what, as we go through today, that's what we'll be talking about, and walking you through some of that. So we'll go to the next slide, Miro. As Alana said, this is a 3-part series. So we broke this up into 3 one-hour sessions. Today, you will hear a basic overtap of what a persuasive narrative is and how they work, and we'll show you an example of a persuasive narrative. The next session on March 23rd is going to be another hour session, but at that one, it's going to be a much more interactive session. We're going to actually have you building out your own persuasive narratives, and we're going to be coaching you on development of those narratives. I will tell you there's going to be homework that comes behind that. We're going to actually ask you to work on your narrative and send it to us. And then we're going to do some editing and work one-on-one with you before we get to session number 3. So that at session number 3, we can talk about how to actually present that narrative. How do you take that narrative and make it interactive and live? So we'll walk you through that next session after that.
And I did wanted to mention that this is going to be recorded. So if you've missed anything, this will be available on the website, I believe after a week.
Great.
So nice meeting you guys, everyone. For those that I have not met, I'm happy to be here. I just wanted to walk you through to the agendas here of what a persuasive narrative is and how it works. We're going to be introducing to you what is called a story arc and some of the elements of a persuasive narrative. And then we'll provide an example for you and give you some next steps. But before we move forward, I wanted to invite everyone if we can introduce ourselves, just a brief introduction of your name, where you're located, and the type of practice. Now, I'm not sure how we're gonna go ahead and get this started, but how about Lyra? Let's start with you.
My name is Lyra Ng. I'm a general pediatrician in Daly City, working through the Chinese hospital in San Francisco. We take care of kids who are mostly Medi-Cal funded. About 75% of my patients have that insurance. They're also WIC participants and SNAP participants, as well as recent immigrants. I was in cohort 2.
Yes.
And
Great,
it's great to be back.
Glad
Nice
to have
to
you.
nice to see everyone again.
Great.
Let's jump to Kimberly.
Hi, I'm Kim Newell Green, and can't remember what number cohorts were, but I was in the last one, however they're numbered. I'm a pediatrician in San Francisco, and I do a lot of public health advocacy work. I'm the past president of San Francisco Marin Medical Society. A lot of my work has been centered with SFMMS.
Great to have you, Kim. Lori?
Hi, I'm Lori Kemen, and I'm a general pediatrician. I'm in Santa Clara County, and I was in the last cohort, also whatever number ours was.
Number 3.
Number 3.
We keep track. Terrific.
It's nice to see everybody. Nice to be here again. Great to see you again, Michael, and great to meet you, Marielle.
Good. Let's go to Tim. So Tim, if you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Tim. I'm a general dentist working in LA County. I work with I think I'm the current cohort 2021.
You are.
So nice to see all you guys. And I work with a lot of people, patient with disadvantaged background, as well as migrant workers. A lot of them are working in the horse racing industry. So I take care of those patients on a daily basis. And I look forward to working with you all.
Great. Terrific.
Thank you.
Marie from the beach, you want to say hello?
Yes. Hi, my name is Marie Buell. I'm a general dentist in Oxnard, California. Majority of my practice, the majority of my practice is taking care of children of migrant farm workers. And so, we've been doing a lot of advocacy work for their parents who we have found out have no access to care. So that's basically the thrust of the work that we're doing, and re-educating the parents, going back to the basics of brushing, drinking water from the tap, fluoridation and all that.
Great. Thanks, Marie. Good to see you again. Trinidad?
Hello, everyone. I'm Trinidad Solis. I'm a family medicine physician and also working part-time as a public health physician with the Fresno County Department of Public Health. Doing a lot of work right now with the ag industry and specifically focusing on projects where protecting like farm workers against COVID-19, and that includes vaccinations right now. But yeah, excited to meet you all and work with you.
Terrific. Thanks, Trinidad. Vivian?
Hi, everyone. I always seem to be in my car, but I'm happy I can make these, and the lighting's a little bit weird. I'm Dr. Vivian Yang. I'm a family medicine doctor in Riverside County. I practice full spectrum family medicine for like 70% Medi-Cal patients. So happy to be here. Thanks, everyone.
Great to have you. Amir? Amir, can you, you're muted if you're trying to come in. We'll jump over.
Yep.
We'll jump over to Kristen then.
Hello, my name is Kristen Hughes, and I'm a general pediatrician with the Santa Barbara Public Health Department, and I'm really grateful to be here on this call and learn from you all experts.
Great. Lena?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm Lena Elsaraf. I work at a community health clinic in Los Angeles. I work in family medicine, and we do serve an underserved population, a lot of them Spanish speaking, and I'm happy to be here with everyone. I'm in the new cohort, which I think is cohort 4.
You got it. Somebody's got the numbers right. Good to know.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Melissa?
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Campos. I'm a family medicine doctor down in San Diego, Chula Vista, San Ysidro area in particular. And I work at an FQHC and with a family medicine residency program. And again, same thread also with underserved, predominantly Latino population, and just happy to be here. I'm part of the new cohort as well. And so I'm gonna just go on the ride and the adventure with everyone.
Good news. Enjoy the ride. Okay, Melanie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Thompson. I'm a family medicine physician and a medical director at Marin Community Clinics. And like many people here, also to FQHC, we work primarily with the Latinx population. And like Kim, I have been recently working a lot with the San Francisco Marin Medical Society and doing lots of COVID work at my FQHC.
Great. Raymond?
Hey everyone, Ray Lopez. I think I was in cohort 2 and I'm in Ventura County. Oh, I'm sorry, did you say Raymond?
Yep, no, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so Ray Lopez. I work actually 2 places. I have my private practice. I'm a family physician, as well as I work for the Western Growers Clinic, which is a clinic that serves primarily farm workers in Ventura County. And I'm super excited to see what we can do moving forward regarding COVID and everything else we're working on. Thank you again for everyone for being involved.
Thank you. Pat?
Oops. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Hold on. Let me see if I can do my video. All right. Can you see me?
We can.
Okay. Hey, I'm Pat Cantrell. I was in the first cohort. Back, I don't even know how many years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm a pediatrician in San Diego, and I do a lot of work with obesity. I'm at Kaiser Permanente, so I have a variety. I used to work at FQHC here at Logan Family Health Center, and but I've been at Kaiser, and I'm in the Mission Valley area, so I have a big variety of patients. So the whole spectrum, which is great, and so yeah, there you go.
Very good. Thank you, Pat. Did I miss anybody? All right, let's move forward. We had a quick poll question for y'all. We just wanted to ask, and Alana, I'm gonna let you explain how this works. Oh, there's how it works. That's pretty simple. So how often do you presently share stories about your practice to help people understand an issue? So if you guys can just click in, it's either never, once a year, every few months, monthly, or regularly, which would be more often than monthly. So go ahead and click away and we'll take a quick look at the calculations. I almost wish we could break this out by cohort. It'd be interesting to see who's sharing stories, who's learned to use those stories effectively.
Right. I think that we have about 75%, but I think that includes some of us. So I think that's
oh, yeah, right.
the polling. So hopefully, let's see.
Oh, very good. Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
This is great news. I'm really excited about that. That you're sharing those stories, that you're well set up then to move forward on to doing these persuasive narratives, and you're probably already doing them as persuasive narratives and don't even know it. We'll find out after today. But seeing such a large percentage of you doing this, this is really encouraging news, because what you're going to learn today, and which we'll reiterate over the next 3 sessions, is how powerful those stories are, and what again, you as a storyteller can be such a powerful advocate for the different issues that you're addressing. So good news. All right. So let's move on forward. I think the first question, a logical question, is what is, Muriel, are you advancing?
Yeah, I just need the
or you need to share the screen
poll
again?
to close.
Oh. So the key question here is, what is a persuasive narrative? And I like to refer to the easy way for me to remember it is it's storytelling, but with a purpose. So really making sure that there's a purpose behind what you're doing. It's not just telling the story, which I think is probably what most of you would do anyway. When we're talking about a persuasive narrative, it's the use of human drama to win interest and support. And the reason we need to win that interest is because we know that people have trouble paying attention to lots of technical information. So when we present the information within a story context, people can better understand it and remember it. And I like to think of a persuasive narrative as a door opener. It's the reason we've got the image of an envelope up here is it's really the envelope that can help people start to engage in a conversation. When they hear this, your persuasive narrative, they're much more prepared to start asking you deeper questions and getting deeper into the conversation around policy system or environmental change that you want to work on. But until they get a real sense that this is something that matters to them and that it's relevant to them, they probably aren't going to delve into that envelope. So some of the technical information that is really important to present, it needs to come within this envelope. And that's what the persuasive narrative does, is it gets people interested enough to start to engage, to start to take a look at this information and really dive into these real life experiences so that they can better understand often a more complex and contextual issue that's harder to understand. But when they have the narrative to usher it in, they're much more open to moving forward and having that discussion. The one thing about a persuasive narrative that's different than just storytelling is the persuasive narrative, as its title says, there goes the fire department, is about proposing a solution. It's about moving somebody to adopting a position and being able to understand and speak to that position really effectively.
Mike, but before we dive into the persuasive narrative, we wanted to briefly go over some foundational pieces. Now we have different cohorts from the beginning to pass. So those of you that may have done some training with Mike and Paula, this is going to sound familiar, but for those of you that are in the new cohorts, this is something that we're going to be introducing and reiterating to you about the elements of communication. These are our foundational pieces of what makes a good communication. So what we're going to be setting up here is we want you to understand the what, the why, and the ask. First off, we want to make sure that when you do a good messaging, you have to understand the audience. You have to know who you're talking to. And from that aspect, then you're going to know what they want to know or what they need to know. Why should they care about this information? And then what should they do with the information you just provided? This is just how we receive information as human beings, and this is how we're wired to think. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go over a little bit on that. So once you understand who your audience is, now you need to know your what. So what does your audience need to know? The one thing that you don't want is you don't want to, this is the setup for your problem. You need to give them the information that they need, but what we don't want to do is give them a big piece of information with so many pieces that they will pick and choose. What we want is something simple that's straightforward. One simple piece of information, and it may not be simple information, but it needs to be a piece of information that's focused, that has details around it. What you're seeing here is what you're trying to convey is a missing piece of that puzzle, but you don't want to give them the whole puzzle. For example, like, we don't want to tell them everything. An example of this is when school children are falling asleep in class. For example, for some of us, there's an issue of students not being able to pay attention in class, and this is pre-COVID, of course.
Yeah.
And you wanted to talk to the school board about the issues surrounding this and how you can help. We don't want to get into too much of these details, but you have to help them understand with this on the what.
Yeah, I think the important thing here is, again, it's really cherry picking the one piece of information for the one conversation you want to have with your audience. We have a tendency to want to provide them with the entire picture of everything they need to know. That isn't how we digest information. We can digest information when we're and you can be successful in delivering information when you cherry pick that one piece of information you really want somebody to understand. And then if they understand that, it opens the door for further conversations going along in greater depth. But the mistake is to overwhelm people with too much information right off the top. This is, though, when we talk about the what, the why, and the ask, and for all the graduates, you guys are painfully familiar with all of this, but and for cohort 4, you will be hearing about this when we do media training. But the critical piece of any message is the why. We hear people when they say what, but we listen to people when they tell us why. And I think this is really important. All of us have filters. We're overwhelmed with information, and we tend to discard information that we don't see as having value. We make that decision of what has value based on the why part. Why does this matter to me? Why should I care about this? And you can see there's a list here of different reasons. Everybody's got different reasons why they should care. But in developing your message, as well as in selecting your persuasive narrative, you really need to think about your audience, and you need to think about this why. This is the most important part of storytelling. It's the most important part of messaging and communications.
And then when we move from the why, and that is part of it, we need to give them some type of action. People are often anxious to know what they should do about this information that you've just presented them. It completes the message, and it provides them with some type of guidance. It is also your chance to advocate and offer direction. This is where you as a provider can then offer up that solution. This is where your expertise will come in. But with this, we also need to be mindful that our action needs to be something that is doable and simple. An example of this is like a used car salesman. When you're trying to buy a car, a used salesman will not try to sell you the car right off the bat. What he will or she will do is she will offer up a test drive. something that is something simple, non-intimidating, but they understand that once you make a simple step, you're more likely to move forward with additional step. And then you are more likely to keep moving forward. So offering up some solution that is simple, that's plausible and immediate, is the way that we need to think about the next step for an action.
So those are the parameters of a message as we take a look at the message. And again, with the action, just as we talked about being specific with the what, with the action, you want a very simple, doable action that people can take. And when you're thinking about this from an advocacy perspective and working with school boards or with the county or with different legislators, the mistake we make is walk into their office and say, we want you to pass this piece of legislation or pass this policy. That isn't very realistic. Instead, what you want to do is invite them to start to become more engaged with you by offering them something simple that they can do right on the spot. We'd love to come back and meet with you and the board and present some background information or a study that's been done on this so you have a better understanding of this direction. When they say yes to that, you've opened the door. There's as Muriel said, you've doubled your opportunity for them to take a bigger step because psychologically they're now engaged with you. So that's all about messaging. And that's what the core of a good message is all about. But the important thing, if you really want your message to be memorable, you need to tell a story. So let's just talk about why we bother with persuasive narratives. And again, a persuasive narrative is storytelling with a purpose. And the reason we do it is because people remember, people connect when they hear a story. Stories also help them empathize with the issue that you're talking about. And that leads to higher level and higher potential for commitment. A story also provides tangible evidence for people, but most importantly, it provides a human perspective, which is where we really plug in and pay attention to this. When we talk about storytelling and persuasive narrative, there's a really good reason we do this. It's because the human brain is hardwired for stories. We have all been trained from our childhood to learn through stories. And our literature is ripe with storytelling. So from the days of Homer forward, we've always learned and taught audiences to remember information and to digest information through stories. It's no different in today's world. It's actually probably even stronger as we've moved into more of a social media and televised presentation. People expect things to be presented in that kind of way. So that's why we bother with a persuasive narrative.
Storytelling is so powerful. What makes it powerful? This is actually exactly what the fellowship is all about. As physicians and dentists, you're in a position that you're seeing in your practice that are human, that are visual, and that can essentially become impactful. You're seeing in your practice these types of stories that are tellable. I mean, you run through them and you actually have the ability to really harness these stories as physicians and dentists in your practice. When you think about what makes the story powerful, this is actually where you shine. This is where your stories can come alive and have that type of impact that no one else really can gravitate to. So what you see every day in your practice, these are the stories that will help people understand what the issues are, respond to them, and hopefully can move them into the right direction.
Great, so let's talk about, you may have heard of story arcs before, but we think it's important to introduce you to the concept of a story arc. Not because you need to think this through and when you're developing stories, but you should understand that this is classic in storytelling. It is how every screenwriter in Hollywood is trained to tell a story. It's how every novelist develops stories. And I don't mean to say that it's formulatic, but it is how a strong story is told when we look at a story arc. And it starts with, these phases just start with a general setup. It's the quick introduction. Introduce me to the players and to what's going on. At some point, then you start to rise up into an inciting incident. So something happens to start to raise that there's some tension that's starting to build. That tension continues to rise and starts moving into some action. So at this point, you're now starting to get if you're watching a movie, you're hearing that music that's threatening or getting you excited and raising your blood pressure. Finally, any good story is going to reach its climax. And this is the high point of the story. At the climax is when we're pretty much holding our breath now and wondering where things are going to go. And then you start coming down from that curve. So at that point, you can from the climax, you're going to move into a success or failure. And with stories, it can be either one. So if you were telling a story about your practice, it can be success, or it could be a failure. People learn from failures as well. So that makes perfect sense. Then we come into a falling action. Things start to calm down a little bit. And finally, and this is really important, we end up with a resolution. And resolution is where you're going to start to find that your role as an advocate becomes really powerful in moving forward. So this is a traditional story arc, and I think you can map it out with any story you've ever read, that this is pretty much how the stories are told. What doesn't always happen is this curve isn't always this nice up and down like this. Sometimes it's a very dramatic climb up and a very dramatic fall down. Sometimes it's a very, very gradual climb up. All of those are they're going to follow the same elements as you walk along. And we'll show you how that story arc works. And you'll hear us as we talk in our next two sessions, we're not feeling this rise in action. So as we talk about these things, we're going to be using some of these terms because they are where the success of your story arc is going to come, is making sure all these pieces are in place. All right.
Now that you have a sense of what a story arc is, let me present you with some facts. This is how we typically present information to people. High unemployment, especially in low-paying service sector jobs. Lower income families struggling to pay utilities bills. Families food insecure, many for the first time. Families stretch budget by buying cheap, typically unhealthy foods, which exacerbate existing chronic health conditions. CalFresh underutilized among pandemic's newly impoverished. So what we have here are just some bullet points of facts. And what's the likelihood that anyone will remember all 5 of these points? Like if I were to ask you to recall all of them and saying back to me, the likelihood is that maybe you can repeat 1 or 2 without seeing it on the screen. And that's not really that high. And this is just not how we're wired to do. Then that's the problem with a fact-based presentation.
And that's exactly why when we go from, this is the reason, and this is probably the best way of explaining why we think it's so important to develop persuasive narratives, because persuasive narratives will take those 5 pieces of information and mold them into a story that people will remember all of those pieces and understand where this is going. But when we present information as memorization of different points, very few people are going to remember them. They're going to cherry pick the 1 or 2 things that matter to them, and often they're going to cherry pick the thing that's least significant to you as an advocate. So when you go into storytelling, you've provided a context that makes it very memorable for people to move forward on all of this.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So from your perspective, we took a shot at turning those 5 bullets into a persuasive narrative. What we've done is something that you can tell people from your own perspective that people can understand. So here it is, from taking all these facts and thinking of it and turning it into a persuasive narrative
From a provider's perspective.
from a provider's perspective.
So this is how, this might be taking those 5 pieces of information. If we were to digest these, this is how it might be how you might tell a story as a provider that would really be impactful in getting people to move in the right direction and remember this information.
What I'm going to be doing is reading this story. Manny's been my patient for years. A hardworking, dedicated man, especially proud of his 2 young children. Manny is pre-diabetic, but we've worked together to keep this condition under control. When he came in 5 months ago, however, I was shocked. He looked 10 years older, his sugar levels had spiked and his spirit seemed broken. But he and his wife had lost their food service jobs and were worried about eviction. They were stretching their budget by buying cheap processed foods, which were wrecking the careful diet we'd worked out together and left Manny too ill to even look for new work. Manny was too proud to ask for help, but I told him about the CalFresh program. I also reminded him that his health was too valuable to let pride get in the way of seeking help. Last week, Manny was back. He's starting to look like his old self again. He signed up for CalFresh, his family is eating better, and he and his wife had even taken some online nutrition classes. He's still struggling financially, but with better diet, he has the energy to hunt for new work. I just hope other people who, like Manny, have been devastated by this pandemic will also learn about the government programs that are out there to help.
Okay, so hopefully what you've seen from Manny's story here is how we take those 5 points and turn it into a story that grabs all of those 5 points, but most importantly, grabs the attention of the person, starts to get them feeling engaged in the story, and starts to demonstrate how you can help them move in the right direction. In this case, we're talking about getting people to sign up for CalFresh who may be reluctant to sign up to CalFresh because they've never been in a situation where they needed government assistance before. So that's how this would all work. And I just wanted to walk you through that story arc again, how this works in with the story arc. We had our setup where we introduced Manny and his family. We have an inciting incident, which is the recession and his lost job as a result of COVID. We have that rising action, which was the unemployment and the poor diet that comes from limited food access or limited income and access to healthy foods. Then the climax is his weight gain and his pre-diabetes reemerging. We see the success or failure is that he's now accessing CalFresh for he and his family, as well as nutrition classes. And then the falling action is we start to see that he's now starting to improve his diet and his health. And then finally, the resolution would be that he's reemployed. So he's now able to go out and find work all over again, so that there is a solution to all of this. So you can see again how the arc follows through on all this story. And I would challenge you that it'd be very hard to tell a story without having an arc in place. It's just very natural that there's going to be an arc as we move through all this. So this is how we pull these stories together and what these persuasive narratives look like. They often are composites of several different things that you may see in your practice. That's perfectly fine. We always name the individual because people remember names and identify with names, but it doesn't mean that we necessarily that it has to be we don't use the real person's name in most cases. That's up to you. You'll be able to make that decision, but my guess is with HIPAA, you're probably going to want to avoid doing something like that. But again, I think the important thing is you can see how this works as we walk through the arc on all of this and trying to understand the story. But I think the one point I really wanted to point out in that story is it is leading to a resolution. It's leading to, if it was you, being able to advocate for the importance of helping people get on to CalFresh or some government support program because it ties in with their health. That just happened to be the one that when we were writing this up, we wrote it in. There'll be dozens of different policy approaches that you may want to try and take. But your story will follow that arch as you walk through all of this and take you hopefully to some resolution where you're helping the person you're telling the story to start to understand it and starting to see how they can have a role in adopting the behavior or the policy or the whatever it is that you want to try and move them toward.
So now that you've had a little understanding of the story arc, I wanted to know, did this work for you? Can you see how this helps people not only remember information, but react positively to the information and hopefully think about how they can embrace the solution that you're offering up. So by thinking, and did it work for you? Did put a face to the crisis? It helped people understand the situation? Did it make it real and relevant? Did it create empathy? Did it identify with the character? Is it memorable and retellable? Is it offering a realistic first step? And is it inviting action? And so what we want to know is if you said yes to most of this, then you have then created a persuasive narrative.
So I wanted to pause because this is a chance now. I wanted to open this up for some conversation. When you heard the persuasive narrative, if you think back to those 5 points that Muriel presented, does the persuasive narrative, can you see how a persuasive narrative helps move you to taking this to a much more personal and emotional level, but also helping people see the entire context and walk away with the ability to tell this story to somebody else? And one of the reasons that I think these persuasive narratives are so important is because they are memorable. And when we make these memorable, people will reiterate the story. Many of you guys have heard me say this before, but we often take these types of stories to legislators and we meet with them in their chambers and we'll talk to them with one of you and let you present a story. And I can tell you that I have seen them literally walk out of their offices and down to the assembly floor and stand up and tell your story verbatim back to their colleagues. And the reason they do it is because they know that their colleagues will remember this story. They could talk to them till they're blue in the face about AB 423 or whatever legislative piece they're talking about, and it will largely go over their head, but all of those legislators will remember the story and they'll be able to tie that story to the legislation and be able to think about it in that broader context. So, but let me pause here and open it up for all of you for any questions you have about this or what your thoughts are about the power of these persuasive narratives and your ability to use these in your own advocacy work, drawing from your practice. And Marie, I saw you had a question here. How do we break down a persuasive narrative into a radio interview? I love you, Marie. I knew you'd go there. And it's a great question. We will talk about that more in our third session, but there is, when you have your persuasive narrative, again, on radio especially, radio loves having a story that's wrapped around. If they're doing an interview, they love when you tell stories because they know their audience is enchanted by stories and likes to hear storytelling. So being able to introduce this to them is perfect. So in an interview, when somebody asks you a question, you need to be prepared to bring the persuasive narrative into the dialogue by just simply saying, you know, I'm so glad you asked that question. The other day in my office, I want to tell you about one of my patients that I was talking with. Maria came in and then you just go in and drop into the story. people, and I'll tell you, radio stations especially, if they have the time, really love when you tell stories. Just use the story again as a persuasive narrative, not just simply to tell the situation, but to invite people to start to move toward your position on what needs to be done. So the persuasive narrative is not just about telling your story, it's always about advocating for a direction that people need to move in. Melissa is asking, when do you recommend, what do you recommend when the time is limited? It depends on how limited it is, but if you have 5 minutes with somebody, you absolutely have time for a persuasive narrative. Now, if they're looking for a sound bite, if it's a reporter and they're just looking for a sound bite, this isn't going to necessarily work. We will tell you in our communications trainings, when we're doing media training with you, that everything, their time is longer, and they'll have the time to listen to the story. They'll make the decision whether they use it or not. But if it's a compelling persuasive narrative, they probably will use it because it makes for really good sound on the radio. It makes for a good story in the newspapers. And if you read newspaper stories, you're going to see they often start with a narrative right off the top. They'll tell you a story about somebody. Again, they do it because their readers are like to read these stories and learn from those types of stories. If you don't, if it's a matter of somebody's looking for a 30-second response from you, then a persuasive narrative is not going to be appropriate. You won't have time for persuasive narrative. But we are going to encourage you to always have this persuasive narrative in your back pocket and ready to drop it. Have it tied to the issue that you're trying to promote, so that you can drop it whenever you want to. Other comments or questions? Did you guys feel like the narrative made a difference over the 5 points that Muriel first proposed? You guys can come off mic anytime if you want to talk.
Yes, I felt it was a good story. I think it hit all the points that you guys talked about. And if I was the politician or the decision person, I would have been swayed by that story.
Great. I mean, that is the whole point. And they're not hard to come up with. You guys have such incredible, I've had the opportunity to interview many of you, and you guys come up with incredible stories. What I really want to do is invite you to bring those forward. It is a key part of the entire fellowship, is using stories to bring people to these issues. And again, thinking through the structure of those stories so that they're thoughtful, but they're powerful as you move forward. Anybody else, what were your senses as you listened to the narrative?
Kimberly.
Yeah, I just actually have a quick question. It's a very powerful narrative, and these are also great. I was thinking about whether, so I see that one person's or one family's story is very powerful, but what about a story that speaks to kind of the volume of these stories? For example, I was in the emergency room the other night, and 5 kids came in with ingestions. I've never seen so much suicidality in my career. This used to happen twice a month. Is that as powerful as there was a kid who came in and here is his or her story?
You know, Kim, it's a really great question. And generally we love a single, well, I hate to say it, but we call them a hero in our story, whether, you know, in narratives, they're always the hero. Generally, a single hero is easier to follow because it's more personal and you can tie into it. In your case, however, yours is a story that needs to be told in its broader context. 5 is different than 1. The 1 could happen anytime, but you are able to tell something. And again, I think people are really going to pay attention when they hear that you're seeing 5 and you used to see only 2 in an entire month and you've got 5 in a night. Then the story needs to go there. And that's perfectly fine as you move through all of this. So while there's a formula for this, it's not a fast and fixed formula. The formula is flexible. It's cherry picking the information that you think is really critical in all of this. What you wouldn't want to do is say 5 and then identify all 5 and try and take them through each of their stories, because we'd get bored with the whole thing. but your whole story is the numbers there. And so in that case, I would say the numbers become your hero.
Mhm.
Anybody else, other thoughts about the narrative? So let me just move on one more slide then on to what happens when the narrative falls flat, and it often does. And so this really is just the opposing side of what to do in a narrative. This is what you need to be careful about not doing in your narrative. First of all, if your story is too sterile, it's really important that your story has personality to it, that it feels very human, that there's people involved here. It's one of the reasons that we deliberately use names in here. Now, even if the name is a pseudonym for somebody, we use a name because people remember the name and they feel like there's legitimacy when the name is attached to it. But again, I can't tell you how many times I've had people come back to me and say, well, remember the Elena story you told me? And I'm like, they've labeled it, and it's easier to remember because of that. But the story should be colorful. It should be lively. I didn't need to introduce that Manny had 2 kids. That was really irrelevant to the story, except that I wanted you to know that Manny was a father and he has 2 young kids he's proud of. I'm starting to just lightly color the story with some humanity to it all. So remember this, that your story, don't let it be too sterile. It shouldn't just be a recitation of the facts. It needs to be, we need to put some meat on the bones and create some real texture to what we're telling there. Story arcs will fall if you get too wrapped up in facts and figures. I don't need to know the full diagnosis and what it means. I don't need to know what all the treatment is. I don't want to know what the plan is that you have. I want to get the really broad picture of all of this. When we get caught up in the facts and figures, we start to lose people immediately. They're intimidated by this. They don't feel like they understand it all. And they're, quite honestly, they become bored. Your story no longer, it's starting to move into that sterility factor that we don't want in a story. Instead, we want the humanity to always come through in all of this. The other thing that happens where I see arcs fall flat, where your persuasive narrative will fall flat, is that the resolution just doesn't feel concrete. Like, I don't get it. Now, this is an entire new conversation, and we will talk about this in our next session, but this resolution not feeling concrete is something that you need to be thoughtful of. And it's one of the places that when we suggest that you work with persuasive narratives, I will tell you honestly, a lot of the persuasive narratives that we work with use real life situations to tell half the story. They take us through to the climax of where the real problem is, and then we will engineer the story to get to the resolution. So it may not have happened, but we will say something like, but imagine now if Manny. So instead of having the ultimate resolution, because quite honestly, sometimes we don't have the resolution. A lot of the work that you're leading to has not moved to resolution yet. So I often will say now, here's Manny in the situation, but imagine if Manny was able to get onto CalFresh and take advantage of some of the school lunch programs he didn't know about for his kids. What could have happened for Manny? He may be in a better position now. He's more relaxed, he's better fed, he's overcome his diabetes issues, so that he can go back and get work and start to look for work where he's been too exhausted and felt too ill to do that in the past. And now suddenly he's able to find a job, he's back on a stable setting. And I'm not going to say that nutrition was the sole reason, but having access to that was part of the path to get there. So those resolutions, we're going to talk about this in future sessions. You won't always have them as part of your story. You may only be able to get to the climax, and that's okay. There's a way of telling your story where you can invite people to move over into the resolution, but the resolution has to feel concrete and it has to resonate with the people that you're talking about. So your audience needs to connect with this information in order to be successful. They need to really feel like this is somebody that they could know. And this has hit them. Again, we're trying to move this out of just the brain and into the gut. And when we respond to this from a real soul perspective, then people will start asking you the very specific questions about, well, how many times have you seen this happen? And what happens, what kind of treatments are you using? And if we were to pass this policy, how much would it cost? And all of those questions, I never want you to build them into your persuasive narrative. Your persuasive narrative serves the sole purpose of prompting them to start becoming so interested in the story that they ask those questions. And when they ask their questions, now you own them. They are now your partner. They are engaged in this whole story, but they won't get there until there's this emotional connection has been made. And the emotional connection comes because every one of you has amazing stories. We just need to know how to tell them and how to prepare them so that we can plant them into different places. And I will tell you, and we'll talk more about this, but I will tell you that we get very frequently, the stories are told in a whole host of different ways. Sometimes it's a personal presentation. Sometimes it's a PowerPoint. Sometimes it's a one-page leave behind. We're going to show you all kinds of examples of different ways, but in every case, they still follow the same format and hopefully still have the same pressure or same presentation and power of moving all this forward. Okay, so with that, we'll just, I don't, if there's any other questions or comments that anybody has, we'd love to hear them.
I know that we are kind of running out of time.
Go ahead, Nira.
Thank you so much. I just love listening to all of these, and the handouts are so awesome. I just wanted to give an example of how a persuasive narrative helped during one of my advocacy events. Is that okay?
Absolutely. That's what we'd love to hear.
Okay, I was in the sugar sweetened tax beverage community committee back in San Francisco when the soda tax first came out, and there was a discussion about how to allocate the funds, which were quite extensive in the millions of dollars. And my particular stand is that children's oral health needs funding so that children can have general well-being from healthy teeth. And my person whom I was speaking with felt like having more playgrounds was necessary at school. So my story was about a young child who could not go out to play because he had so many cavities. He couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep, and most of all, he couldn't learn. So without having his teeth whole through preventive services and tertiary interventions, having that play yard available would have made no difference for him.
Nice, very powerful. That's exactly, Nira, you're a star. That's great. I mean, I've heard so many of you tell these types of stories and tell them really well. What we're really hoping is that we can help you package these effectively and show that they'll be able to be reintroduced in several different manners and different ways. And you know, you don't need to always change your story. The story can be just as powerful told to, you know, just because you've told it to one person doesn't mean that other audiences won't be impacted by it. So I know we're running right into our time. So I just wanted to remind everybody that our next session will be on March 23rd, same time, same bat channel. And during that one, we're actually going to, you'll have worksheets and we're going to help you build your actual persuasive narrative. So it will be much more engaged. You won't have to listen to Muriel and myself lecture to you. This is going to be more of a conversation. And like I said, there will be homework that comes out of this because we really want to make sure that you have a crafted persuasive narrative that you can use that we will then be presenting during the April 27th meeting. So everybody, thanks so much. And again, this is recorded. So if you wanted to go back to this, you can go back to the fellowship website and you'll be able to listen to the session. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Melissa, do you have a question?
No, sorry, I was just trying to clap with the emoji. Sorry.
We'll take it.
Thank you very much, everyone. Please feel free to reach out if you need anything. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Michael. Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.